What? Oh shit. Woo! We did it. We actually did it. The date is currently May 4th, 2020. My name is Nicolas Chae, and I am a junior in the economics department at Princeton University. As a junior, and in order to advance to senior standing, every single student is required to submit a junior paper. Now, a junior paper is essentially the culmination of an entire year's long work of independent study, somewhat related to your choice of major. Now, for me, my junior paper is due in exactly 1 week from today, May 11th. I'm currently sitting at 14 pages with a total of about 2,500 words, which in all honesty is not that much, so I definitely have a lot of work to be put in over this next week. Throughout the course of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I'm turning my junior draft paper into basically the culmination of everything that I've been working towards this year. So the clock is ticking and we definitely have a lot of work to do. I'm fucked. I'm literally fucked. Now, I will make a separate video entirely dedicated to the topic of my junior paper, but for the purpose of this video, I will give you a quick summary. Essentially, it's titled Sneakernomics, and I'm looking at the sneaker resale market and figuring out whether or not the presence of a collaboration, either an influencer, a celebrity, or an athlete, is going to have an effect on the final price that this shoe is being resold for. Now, obviously, over the past few years, there have been tons of different collaborations, so a few examples of the products I'm looking at are going to be obviously Off-White and Nike's collaborations, Travis Scott and Nike's collaborations, Adidas and Kanye West, Steph Curry and Under Armour are just a few examples of the types of shoes that I'm going to be looking at. Now, this paper is essentially broken up into 5 different sections. The first section is essentially going to be an introduction about what your topic is, why you chose to pursue it. The second part is going to be your literature review. A literature review is essentially where you go look at similar papers in your field that are relevant to this topic so that you can do an analysis and figure out whether or not any of those results can be applicable to your own project. Third and fourth are going to be the data and methodology, which is essentially where you collect all the data, figuring out your variables, your equations, the regressions that you're going to run, and then the conclusion is essentially where you summarize your results, figure out whether or not any of these variables actually had a correlation. Honestly, it is pretty complicated, so I won't go into too much detail, but I will just kind of break it down as I go along. Yeah, I need to stop talking and start writing. So basically, I just went through and read over my advisor's notes on the previous draft that I submitted, and there is quite a lot that I messed up on. So it's going to take a lot more work than I was expecting. But I will say, when it comes to tackling such a big project like this, where there's literally so much data and analysis that you have to conduct, first off, when it's crunch time and you're facing a deadline, making a schedule of the exact task you need to complete every single day is the best way to make sure you're making actionable steps to completing this entire project. Secondly, breaking it up into chunks is going to be the best way to tackle something like this. It's definitely not going to be something you can finish all in one day, so my plan is to break it up section by section so that I have something actionable that I can work on every single day. So today, I'm really just going to focus on the introduction and the literature review. Those two parts are going to take up a fair amount of time, because based on what my advisor is telling me, I really need to focus on my style and clarity issues as well as the citations. So that's going to be the main focus of today. Alright, so today is Tuesday. I've scheduled this day to do the majority of my data collection. The process of this is honestly going to be the most tedious and probably the most time-consuming part of this entire project, but I have an entire day, so I'm going to try and knock out as much of it as I can. The process is pretty complicated. I won't go into too much detail about it, but basically I have to go on StockX, scrape a bunch of data, and then process that into our Stata output system. If that doesn't make any sense, don't worry, it doesn't really make sense to me either, but I'll kind of walk you through the process as I go through it. Alright, so today is Wednesday. For the past hour or so, I have finished collecting up the majority of the data that I need to, but my research is solely focused on the value of sneakers in the resale market that have a distinctive collaboration or not. So after narrowing down my list, I basically broke it down into two categories, obviously if it has a collaboration or not. Now within this search, I'm essentially breaking it up into a base model or a shoe that doesn't have a distinctive collaboration, and secondly, if that particular model has been reiterated with a collaboration such as Off-White, Travis Scott, Chae, Fear of God, CDG. There are obviously hundreds of brands that have done collaborations with sneaker companies, but I'm really focused on the ones that have a similar base model so that we can observe the price change on the collaboration model. Now, like I said, the process is honestly kind of complicated. I wasn't sure how I was going to achieve it, but after reading a quick article, which I will have linked in the description down below, I have basically figured out how exactly to scrape the data that isn't really publicly available via StockX, which was honestly the biggest breakthrough in this entire independent work process, because without the data, I would not be able to run any type of regressions. So this was honestly huge. So first off, you go into StockX, find the sneaker that you're looking for, then you're going to inspect element, go into the network panel, type in the term activity, refresh it, and then it's essentially going to bring up this URL, and this URL is a specific API of that single shoe. Now with this API, you can import it into another API reading software. The one that I'm using is called Postman. Trust me guys, I didn't know what any of this meant before, but I learned it along the way. Essentially, once you paste that URL into the software, you can essentially change the parameters of how many results your program is going to come up. So I just set my limit at 10,000 so I can essentially collect all the transactions that have ever been made on this specific shoe. The variables that it will generate are going to be the amount or the price that it actually sold for on StockX, the specific shoe size, as well as its currency in local US dollars. Now, once you have done that, you have done the majority of the work. You download it as a JSON file, then you convert it to a CSV file. This is a pretty important step because the software that we're using to run our regressions and find the statistics is going to be an app called Stata. If you don't know Stata, it's probably going to be taught in your basic econometrics course, but it's really valuable for you to analyze large quantities of data. There are tons of different functions that you can do within it. To be honest, in my courses, learning Stata was honestly the hardest part of learning econometrics, but it's proven to be super useful, especially when I'm going to be running these real-time diagnostics. So after reconverting the files to a CSV file, I essentially import it into Stata. From there, I have dropped the unnecessary variables. So there are a bunch of different variables that were collected that aren't necessary. I've added a variable for a brand name so that I can identify it later in the process. I've also created a variable for the retail price so we can compare that based on what it originally sold for. I've also generated a variable for a collaboration. So if it is a collaboration, it's going to be the value of 1. If it's not a collaboration, it will equal a value of 0. If none of that made sense, don't worry. I have screen recorded the entire process so you guys can get a better visual understanding of exactly what I was doing. Honestly, I don't even know the full extent of what exactly I'm doing because now I've just collected all the data. I have to figure out how I'm going to sort it, how to analyze it, and finally how to run my regressions. So that's going to take up the rest of today. Whew, that was a mouthful. Another big obstacle that I have to overcome is that this is not like any other essay assignment that I've ever worked on because the fact that it is an empirical research paper. Now, given that context, that means my writing has to be a lot more clear, concise, and just cut straight to the point, meaning that everything has to be cited correctly, find similar research papers in this field, compare and analyze those to my topic, finally making sure that everything is cohesive and flows well. So now I'm focusing on the literature review section, which is essentially where I went and found 3 to 4 different articles that covered similar topics to what my independent work was covering. Using the results of their research, I'm able to integrate it into my own paper, but add on to those findings and talk about what new conclusions I'm going to be able to reach. Alright, today is Thursday. I'm really trying to get the majority of this paper written today. Honestly, I've spent the past few days just collecting the data, but now I really need to analyze it, run the regressions, and find my conclusions. So this is honestly going to take the most part. Alright, today is Friday, giving me almost 3 days left for me to complete my junior paper. Over the past few days, I've made significant progress in terms of just cleaning up my paper in general, adding a few more paragraphs to broaden the scope of what exactly I'm talking about, as well as finalizing my data set, which, like I said, was going to be one of the most important aspects of this entire research paper. Especially in the field of economics, you can't really write a research paper without having credible research and data to support your hypotheses. So as of right now, my next steps are going to be running the regressions, which I have a call with my advisor to help me figure out exactly what variables I should be accounting for, as well as what are the effects that I'm going to be looking at. So after that call, hopefully we'll have a little bit more progress made. Hello?
Hey Nick.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Just been trying to get this paper over with.
Yeah, I know. So talk to me. That's fair. That's fine. I'd just like you to also get a month. So now you need to generate a month. Gen month equals subst.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today is Sunday. We have made it to the final stretch of my junior independent work process. I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing this process. Today, I'm going to try and finalize everything that I need to. There's just a couple loose ends I need to tie up. It is due Monday, but I'm going to try and get it done as soon as possible. So yeah, let's get to work. Alright, we have made some pretty significant progress over the past few hours. However, in my final paper, I have included 3 to 4 different tables that I've interpreted about what I think this data and results actually mean. So basically, to summarize, if a shoe has a collaboration, people on average are willing to pay almost $500 more, which is absolutely crazy. The premium on these shoes is essentially 285% more than its average retail price, which basically means people are willing to pay 3 times more than what it actually sold for. So if we're looking at like the Off-White Jordan shoes or Travis Scott Nike collabs, those shoes will retail for around $200 and then be resold for upwards of $600 to $800, which may seem a little bit surprising, but the research I found in my literature review supports the fact that people are willing to spend more money on luxury consumption goods to make it seem like they're more wealthy and can conform to specific groups. So that's the basis of the conclusions that I found. Honestly, I am pretty much at a wraps. Once again, I just need to format this a little bit better so it flows more as a research academic paper, and then we should be done. So I'm pretty proud of this, honestly. It's crazy. You know, every student at Princeton basically has to go through a junior paper and then complete a senior thesis. So the fact that I went through this entire process by myself with the help of my advisors is honestly kind of crazy. I never really thought that I'd be at a place where I could write a 20-page academic paper on the effect of collaborations on sneaker resale prices. Honestly, this was a pain in the ass, and every time I opened this document up, I felt like I could not make any progress, but I'm pretty proud of how far I've come. I mean, this was a year-long process. I really only started documenting this last week of it, but over the past few months I have been writing drafts, outlines, prospectus, receiving comments, getting feedback, and reiterating on this entire project. So seeing that come full circle is pretty satisfying. And yeah, it is currently 11:30 on Monday. Exactly 1 week ago from today, I was not at a good place, in all honesty, at where this paper was, but I have made significant progress. I'm glad you guys were able to see every step that I took to get to where I am right now. Basically, I wrapped up my conclusion. There are just a last few things that I have to check off. I'm gonna create a cover page and then proofread all my work. Then we should be ready to submit this thing. So usually there's a traditional way that most people will create their cover page, but you guys know me, I don't like to be like everyone else. So I'm gonna just create my own one on Photoshop, make it look a little bit cooler, and add my own flair. So let's get to work. All right, I'm gonna print it out so I can do a final review. We are getting close to the finish line. I printed everything out so that I can do one last look, and then we're gonna submit this bad boy. All right, guys, we did it. I just read through. There were surprisingly no typos or grammatical errors, and I'm pretty happy with how everything is looking. Now I'm just gonna submit it. All right, so in total, we came up to 19 pages with a total of 3,344 words, which was a significant improvement from what we started with 1 week ago. I'm pretty glad I was able to pick a topic that actually had interest to me and that I was actually motivated to study, because a lot of people will just choose topics that are somewhat related to economics but don't have any inherent value to them. This entire process taught me a lot, but I'm ready for this to be over. Submit. Woo! Oh my gosh. We did it. We actually did it. Well guys, that wraps it up. I am officially done with junior year. That's pretty crazy for me to say. I think that this entire process taught me a lot about myself as an academic. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something along this way. I mean, it was pretty stressful given that I only had 1 week to complete it, but it is quite a pleasure to be done with this. So if you enjoyed this, please make sure to drop a like down below. It helps out a ton, and leave me a comment if you guys learned something valuable from this video. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Let's go, baby, senior year. One last thing, I know a lot of people are going to be interested in reading this entire junior independent work. As of right now, I will not be posting it online because I just submitted for a grade, and we all know the troubles I've had with academic regulations and my YouTube channel. So for now, I'm just gonna hold off on posting it, but I will definitely make a separate video as well as having a link that people can read it at. Peace.